Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time for another Q&A. So let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. How should you alter your training and diet after age 50? I see I am no longer responding like in the past. I am going, my body is handbraking. After 30 plus years of lifting, should you target the holding, not losing, or still push to get stronger? To me, the latter include risk taking that is not smart. My head is stronger than ever, though. You should talk more about mental aspects the lifting gives. The brain is the strongest muscle we have when it comes to a happy life. Okay, let's come back over to basically what he's saying here and asking, because we can get into the latter later, and I've done whole videos about cognition and strength training as we age. That's absolutely true. We know that people who strength train particularly have stronger legs, have lower rates of dementia and Alzheimer's and everything else. All that stuff. But as far as that goes, I would say no, we always push for progression, but the way that we go about it changes. I'll give you the perfect example. Look at how I train. I'm going to be 44 this year. I'm trying to get stronger, but notice that a lot of the big taxing structural lifts, I don't do any volume on. I just train them as maxes. In other words, you still don't get hurt. Look, if you max and hit the heaviest you can handle with good form on a squat or a deadlift or a bench or whatever, we don't get hurt. That's not risky, right? I know coaches out there right now who, if you look at what they do at their gyms, they have their clients of every age group max on 4 different exercises, including their 60 and 70-year-olds. It's not dangerous to you to do a lift that is within your 1 rep max capability. But notice I don't train those. I don't use those for volume. Okay, as you get older, it's all going to need to be hypertrophy. Right? You can do your max lifts, but the only strength that you're going to gain is going to be through muscle mass because you're already a well advanced lifter at that point. Right? Your technique's already on point. Do your heavy lifts. Like if you say, hey, I want to get stronger, just push to get stronger, but meaning your max lifts are going to be limited by what they're limited by. And if they go down, it's because you're losing muscle, but that doesn't mean that it's any more dangerous. In other words, if your deadlift was at 500 last year and it drops to 480 this year, but you do a 480 deadlift, you're not using bad form, it's not dangerous at all at your age. What we have to focus on, though, as we get older is going to be the total fatigue. It's why I focus so much on stimulus to fatigue ratios. We get in, you do volume training. Right? Come in and do all your supplemental work. Do your 10s, do your 15s, do your 20s. Try to get stronger by gaining muscle with the volume. Okay? The max lifts teach us how to express that strength. But what I would say, yeah, as you start getting older, we don't want to be standing around doing a bunch of heavy 5x3s. Right? We don't want to do all that stuff. The stuff that creates that extra fatigue with big axial loading exercises, stuff that gets you hurt when things misgroove, right? And again, I would say more and more of how I train these days, just obviously not with the extreme frequencies. Probably a good idea for someone who says, hey, I'm older, past 50. As far as diet goes, you need more protein, period. Every coach out there who works with aging populations notices more animal source protein seems to be required as we get older. We do not assimilate protein as efficiently with every decade. Okay, need to increase your protein. It's just simple reality. Plenty of animal source protein, but your training itself, even to get stronger, you're going to need a higher focus on hypertrophy. Get better at your supplemental lifts in the hopes that they increase your main lifts. Get a better 10 rep max on a hip belt squat or a good morning and hope that that carries over to the big lift. That's just the way to go. All right, next question. For the overhead shoulder press, my physical therapist told me to not bring the bar all the way to the upper chest because it puts excessive strain on the shoulder joint. What are your thoughts on this? Well, it depends on what technique you're using. Okay. So what do you mean? What technique are you using? Where's your elbows positioned and where's your torso positioned? If you're standing perfectly upright and you bring the bar all the way down to your lower chest and your elbows drop behind the bar, he's absolutely right. He's right. But you're also not pressing correctly. You're not pressing to have a good max press if you do that either, are you? Right? You're never going to have a fantastic 1 rep max pressing that way So if you're lifting for technique on that movement to lift the most weight, you're not going to do that anyways. You're going to have the elbows out in front, and you're going to lay back into a mild incline at the bottom. Okay, that's what's going on. That's the difference. Now, that being said, for your rep work, in which you may not be using quite as much of that technique, should you probably stop about an inch above the clavicle? Probably a good idea. It's usually what I do. But yeah, that is the problem. The guys who are too upright, who touch their chest, they do let the bar go too low. Right? If you're not laid back, you don't want to touch your chest if you're not in a laid back position. And I agree with that. So for any rep work in which you are not training like a 1 rep max to where you lay back into a mild incline and have your elbows in front, wrists completely straight and locked, usually wrapped, then yeah, stop an inch above your actual collarbone. But you should still be laid back a little bit. You should not be perfectly upright on a press no matter what. That is not the correct way to do it. And yes, even doing it, if your head is forward at the bottom, it's harder on your shoulders no matter how you perform the lift. Okay, but that's also not the correct way to perform the standing press. So again, it comes down to bar path, angles, and what exactly you're doing with it. The way most people perform the standing press, which is incorrect, I would agree with your physical therapist completely. I would say he's right. So context is everything. Context is everything. But again, are you performing it like most people? Do your elbows out in front and are you laying back? To know it's fine to touch your chest. But most people aren't going to do that on their volume work. They're going to do that on their heavy singles. All right, next question. Hey Jason, is there any possibility that ribs, especially intercostal muscles on the side, is strained due to one-arm dumbbell rows? Every time I do it, it strains my intercostal muscles. Your thought on it? Thanks. Well, here's what I'm going to say. Any exercise that is causing you muscle strains regularly, you need to take out of your rotation. Okay, you need to assess your muscle weaknesses and assess your technique. Now, I strongly suspect that you are performing a one-arm cheat row. Because if you're doing it strict with no movement of the torso, which is the only reason you would do it on a bench, right? You're trying to be strict instead of using a barbell, the correct way to row. Then I've got to question your technique. You need to look closer at what you're doing with your form. If you're flinging the weight up in the air and cheating, as opposed to maintaining your torso perfectly straight and just stretching at the bottom where you get scapular protraction, this shouldn't be happening. Okay, that shouldn't be happening. And as a general rule, any exercise in which you are straining something, you either need to drop that exercise or you need to very, very seriously assess your form. You need to film yourself doing it and figure out what you're doing wrong. Now, if you're going to do any sort of chest-supported row like that, I wouldn't recommend that you do the one arm at all. If you really, really want a dumbbell row, and I generally don't program them, I don't have my clients do them, we do barbell rows. If you really wanted to do a dumbbell row, because you want to remove the posterior chain, which again, not always perfect, why don't you just do them on an incline with both arms at the same time? Like, why are you doing one arm at a time? There's no benefit to that. It just takes twice as long. If you're wanting to do a dumbbell row, use an incline bench and do a chest-supported row with a dumbbell in each hand. Problem solved. Also, if you're trying to get the benefits of rowing and you want to remove the back, you could do an inverted row. Okay? Let's say you're trying to remove the low back completely for whatever reason. You better have a good reason in the inverted row. I mean, look at what you've seen me doing lately. I do the barbell rows on lower body days and I do an inverted row on upper body days. That's also an option if you're just trying to remove the posterior chain. But people have a tendency on that one-arm dumbbell row to cheat. Which again completely negates half the reason they're doing it. And there's no advantage to doing one arm at a time. So again, if you're insisting on doing dumbbell rows, I would generally say get on an incline bench and do 2 of them at a time. be a better option. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.